Main man, made man here. Y'all know how I get down. We talking boxing, man. So right now, fighter of the moment. Right now, everyone's eyes, ears, and hearts are set on none other than Errol Spence Jr. coming off a fantastic victory over the weekend by basically defeating Lamont Peterson, having him quit on his stool, or should I say not come out the corner. And he looked very impressive, man. No ifs, ands, or buts. Looked very impressive. Looks like the most talented fighter right now, possibly at welterweight. The only pretty much left lingering question is how does he perform against guys like Sean Porter or maybe a Keith one-time Thurman? And that's something that we just don't know because these fighters have been so reluctant to get into the ring with Errol Spence. Now, my thing is this, Errol Spence has now shown us that he is the creme de la creme. There's no doubt about it, man. If you're not a believer that Errol Spence is the truth, is the real deal, well, I don't know what else to tell you. The man does nothing wrong. And on top of all of that, ladies and gentlemen, he's a class act. The dude never has nothing bad to say about any other fighter. And, you got to just give this dude his respect and you got to give him his props. And just for the sake of the fact, he never bashes his opponent. He never bashes the guys he's beaten, the guys who's even got out of his way. He's not even through disrespectful comments towards them. Even Thurman and the Porter and the Garcia, Manny Pacquiao, all these fighters who got out of the way, Timothy Bradley, you know what I'm saying? Fighters that have literally stepped out of the way of Errol Spence, he still has nothing bad to say about them. Good dude, man. Humble dude, man. And he is definitely one of the kind of guys who I believe if he, unified or he was the top dog of the division, he has no problem with going up against the next best person in that division. That's what I get from Errol Spence. I don't see him shying away from any sort of competition or big name fight. So with all of these accolades, man, and him doing what he's doing in boxing, well, the thing that comes with that is a closer look and more scrutiny, if you will. You know what I'm saying? That's just how it is. As you get to the top, you're going to get more scrutiny, man. People want to look at you a little closer, and that's just being real. So this has left some lingering questions out there about Errol Spence. Two really that comes to mind that a lot of people talk about a lot of time, and we're going to deal with those issues in this particular video, and that is Errol Spence's weight, and as well as Errol Spence and VADA. Y'all know what I'm talking about. So let's just kind of, if we can debunk any of this stuff today, let's debunk it. You know what I'm saying? And let's really get to the nitty gritty and see if there's any validity to these so-called rumors that people always talk about when it comes to Errol Spence. Now, the very first one now is Errol Spence a weight bully? That is the question. Well, I'll let you hear exactly what Errol Spence has to say about his weight. Take a listen.
Big clothes to hide your size, and I noticed a lot of fights.
Nah, I get heavy. I'm a big guy. Like these pants, these my training camp pants. These my training camp pants. Like I can't wear after the fight. I can't wear these pants at all.
So what's the walk around weight? Can you give us a number?
I mean, it's up there.
my clothes is baggy, even my briefs. I got a belt around my briefs too.
These my training camp pants. Like I gotta buy pants for when I'm not training, and I gotta buy stuff when I'm in camp.
Because I get what he's saying. Like at the face-off, you look like enormous in comparison, but the clothes can add on to that too.
Yeah, clothes can add on to that too. I am kind of a big guy, but I do get big. That's why I work.
How is making weight going for this one? Because listen, you and Cal, people are making this big thing about Cal. And I said the two of these guys are gonna. It's hard for both guys to make 147. You're a big dude at 147. So is Cal. How are you finding on your box?
It's something I've been telling people a lot. Like they be like, they keep saying Kel's a big welterweight. I'm like, you look at the face-off.
Yes.
You look at us. I'm taller than him. I
said this.
I'm really a bigger guy than him. So, it's easy. You just have to be disciplined. A lot of guys, you just blow up in weight before in training camp. And then,
you live it.
Yeah, I live it. Because I can, like I told you before, I can easily get to 180 plus. I can easily get there if I just eat, just rewarding myself. I can get to any fighter can get 20 pounds higher than the weight class. It's not our natural weight class what we're coming down to. It's not natural for me to come down to 47. So it's hard for anybody, you know, to make their weight. It's hard for me to make 147. It's not my natural weight. I'm a grown man. It's hard for me to fight at to go down to 147. So it's hard for anybody. That's why I said, you know, I don't play that in as a factor of him making weight, because it's hard for me to.
I fully agree. It's hard.
That motherfucker look big, man.
Yeah, wait, what are you doing? He said
that motherfucker look big, man. That motherfucker look big, man. That motherfucker look big, man. That motherfucker look big, man.
So you hear it straight from the horse's mouth. You hear from Errol Spence Jr. himself say that, yo, I'm big. He is big. There's videos out there saying with Errol Spence saying that he can compete at damn near middleweight. You know what I'm saying? Errol Spence said it himself. He walks around as a very, very big fighter. And we all accredit Errol Spence Jr. for having this extreme power. You know what I'm saying? I put a lot of it on his youth. And given that he's still young and he has that young bull power. But the facts of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, is Errol Spence coming into these fights bigger than most of his opponents? I mean, he is a huge welterweight. The dude even said himself he can balloon up to 160, 170, maybe even 180 between fights. He is humongous. He admitted himself he is not fighting at his natural weight. The dude can easily fight at 54. Shit, he may even can fight at 160. I mean, I'm being real. Errol Spence Jr. comes in much bigger than a lot of his opponents. Now, a lot of people even stressed about the Kell Brook situation. Errol Spence Jr. was really lasered in on Kell Brook's weight. He was more focused on if he was bigger than Kell Brook or not. Now, to Errol Spence's credit, a lot of times when he was explaining about weight during the Kell Brook buildup, he was more so using it in a way that, yo, people are saying this because they're trying to give Kell Brook some sort of excuse. Like he cutting all this weight is going to deplete him as a fighter, yada, yada, yada. Well, let me just explain to y'all, I got to cut the same amount of weight as Kell Brook. It seems like he was in a lot of interviews explaining himself in that fashion. But by him explaining himself in that fashion, he let the cat out the bag how big he really walks around and how big he really is. Even his trainer, Derek James, was focused heavily on Kell Brook's weight. We remember in the face-off that him and Kell Brook had, and he kept telling him, you just make weight, you just make weight. And then once Errol Spence got into that final face-off in which they all had to share that weight and, you know, and this, that, and the third, they had to share that weight down, then it seems as if Errol Spence became confident right before the fight. But leading up to that fight, there was a lot of doubt, it seemed like, in Errol Spence's face, in my opinion. I even did a video one time when Kell Brook looked at him and told him, you're going to get hurt. And it caught Errol Spence off guard. Errol Spence was in another place then, but leading the day or two right before that fight, Errol Spence gained his confidence. And that is because he came face to face with Kell Brook and noticed that, yo, when you slim down, when you melt down, you ain't that big. That was a key sticking point, as if that was the main thing that Errol Spence was looking for. You looking at a Lamont Peterson fight over this past weekend. Lamont Peterson came in that fight humongous. But clearly we know Lamont Peterson as being a 140 fighter. And you can accredit a lot of that to maybe even water. I don't know. Or even salt or whatever you might want to say. But the fact still remains is that it seems as if Lamont Peterson, when you gain that weight unnaturally, you can't operate with it. Errol Spence walks around as big as he does and operates very well when it comes with that, you know, all that extra weight on him once he rehydrates during the fight. I have yet to really look it up, but I don't know the answer to this, so I'm not going to speculate on what's Errol Spence's weight when he comes into the ring. I haven't looked those up. I do know he's the IBF champion, and I remember the IBF usually having that same day weigh-in, the day of the fight, where you can't rehydrate bigger than 10 pounds. But I'm hearing that the IBF done away with that. So don't know, you know what I mean, if they're going to be doing that going forward or not. But if that is the case, well, Errol Spence does. I remember in the Kell Brook fight, he couldn't come up higher than 10 pounds on the day of the weigh-in, the same day weigh-in. Who knows what he was coming into the ring? You see where I'm going? But so that works for Errol Spence, you know, in his defense. But Still, the fact still remains, man, Errol Spence is coming in much bigger than a lot of these fighters. You look at Danny Garcia. We can sit back and say Danny is cherry picking and he's avoiding Errol Spence. That may be true. But the fact remains is that Danny is not too long ago came up from 140. And Danny, I remember when he first came up to 147, he gradually came up where he took catch weights. He fought Lamont Peterson at a catch weight. You know what I mean? He didn't come full-fledged to 147 because clearly Danny wanted to grow into the weight and make himself a little bigger before he starts to get in there with elite competition. It took him, 2-3 fights before he got in there with Thurman? He had to get that size. And clearly Danny Garcia knows size-wise, he doesn't think he can probably compare in size-wise to Errol Spence Jr. Maybe Keith Thurman feels the same way. Maybe Manny Pacquiao feels the same way. I know maybe Tim Bradley felt the same way. And we will get to that. But the point I'm trying to make is that Errol Spence admittingly himself states that he walks around huge. We see it with our eyes when Errol Spence is between fights. He is a big guy. We see Errol Spence trainer always emphasizing the size of his opponents. How he went down that road in one interview explaining how Kell Brook was not a big welterweight and Vernon Forrest was and Paul Williams was. This guy's not that big. He's only 5'8". It was like a big deal. You know what I'm saying? It was like a big deal. So I think that Errol Spence does come in bigger than a lot of his opponents. And I do think that Errol Spence is weight bullying down that welterweight. And that's just being honest. But I'm not saying he's the only one that does it. I'm just saying he does it. And to me, it explains his ability to steamroll a lot of these welterweights. And, you know, fighters have done this for years. This is one of the reasons that Adrian Bronner has came to prominence. What he was doing in the lower weights, he was bigger than everybody else. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not taking nothing away from Errol Spence, but to those who say that Errol Spence should be fighting at higher weights or he's much bigger for the welterweight division, I say to you, he still makes the weight. He cuts the weight well, and he's still young enough to do it. But yes, I mean, for those and even Errol Spence has stated that if the right offer came to him at 54, he would have took it. Even when the Miguel Cotto fight was being discussed, it was being discussed at a higher weight because they knew Errol Spence would fight at that higher weight. If that attachment deal that didn't come with that, who knew? Spence maybe would have took that fight and went up to 54, putting him in a position to possibly get a Canelo fight. Who knows? I'm just saying. They wouldn't have considered him to come up to that higher weight if they knew he couldn't fight in that weight. So if you think that Spence is too big for welterweight, I may have to agree with you. I may have to agree with you much. Now, the number 2 thing that goes around about Errol Spence that we mentioned, and that is this VADA thing. You know, this all stems from when Errol Spence was mysteriously ranked by the WBC. That's a key word being mysteriously. Okay, look, here's a screenshot, if you will, of the WBC rankings from September of 2016. You do not see Timothy Bradley's name on this list, and you do not see Errol Spence's name on this list. Now, they ordered a fight between Errol Spence and Timothy Bradley Jr., which never happened. And the winner of that fight would have became the number 1 contender. So when Errol Spence says that, hey, I want to face Keith One-Time Thurman, who is now the WBC champion. Or I wanted to face Danny Garcia, former WBC champion, currently ranked by the WBC. Or I want to face Sean Porter, currently ranked number 1 by the WBC. My question is, why didn't Errol Spence stay in the WBC? Now, if you recall back during that time, Errol Spence had a better offer because at the time when they offered him the Timothy Bradley mysterious fight, Errol Spence was also ranked number 1 by the IBF on his route to getting the championship fight with Kell Brook. At that point, they didn't know what Kell Brook was going to do. He was still sitting out for his medical extension. There was talks of a him and Khan fight. There was a talk of him going up to 54 if someone would have challenged him. None of that happened. But Errol Spence was waiting it out at this point. And he was also mysteriously ranked. And according to them, they dropped him when he refused to enroll in the Clean Boxer program. Now, Errol Spence says in his defense, matter of fact, this is what Errol Spence said in his defense.
Can you speak about getting dropped out of the WBC rankings? A lot of them made about Twitter, basically saying that you were ducking VADA testing.
Yeah.
Can you speak on that?
Oh, definitely. No, I did not duck VADA testing. The WBC dropped me out, and I tweeted somebody. I was like, if they'd have had me in the rankings, I would have took it. Because I called one of our guys, Brad, and was like, do I have to take the test? And he was like, no, you have to do it because you're not in the top 10. And I was like, okay, if I was in the top 10, I'd take it, no problem.
So down the road, if the WBC is on the line,
I mean, I want a WBC title. I want a WBC title. That's one of the titles that I want. That's the prestigious title, the green belt. That's the title I want. So I'll take it. There's nothing. We haven't tested for this fight, so
I mean, do you want to test for this fight though?
Yeah, we are.
So according to Errol Spence, he wasn't even ranked by the WBC in the top 10. Actually, I don't know where Errol Spence got bad info from. If you're ranked in the top 15 of the WBC, you have to enroll in the clean boxing program. I don't know what game was being played by the WBC at that time to take two mysterious fighters from opposing networks, opposing sides of the political spectrum in boxing, and try to put them against each other. Now, in my opinion, if Errol Spence wanted his shot at those other fighters, maybe that was his opportunity. Maybe so. But then he had a bigger opportunity on the other side of the tracks with Kell Brook, which was an actual possible title fight. And he was the #1 contender. And we know how the IBF at that time was getting down. They enforced their mandatories, as opposed to the WBC, who plays a lot of games. A lot of games. It's even to the point now with the WBC that fighters have to come out and act like they're injured just so the WBC won't keep putting them in different eliminators and all these other jazz. That's what happened. That's what these fighters got to go through. So at the time, I don't know where the WBC got the gumption to make that fight, but clearly Timothy Bradley, who had already expressed that he wasn't facing Errol Spence or facing Terrence Crawford. You know what I mean? He's already said he didn't want to get brain damage no more. He clearly didn't want that fight. Never even asked for the fight. I don't know if they were trying to tie up Spence. There was some rumors about Eddie Hearn shooting some bag of money to the WBC. I don't know no truth to that. But I'm just saying, man, like, yo, that was funny. And so Errol Spence felt as though he shouldn't have took that VADA test because yesterday I wasn't in the top 10 or 15 and all of a sudden I am and I'm fighting for the #1 contender spot. Fuck out of here. But my thing is on Errol Spence's part, regardless of how it got done, whatever magic wand that was waved, the fact of the matter was that put you in the #3 position. And you were in a very good position. If Timothy Bradley wanted to walk away from that fight, then so be it. You would have still been in a very good position. Now, for all of those who say that he did it because he didn't want to take the VADA test, which is the clean boxing program, which they test you year round, even when you're not in fighting. And it's at no cost to the boxers for anyone who's wondering. The reason Errol Spence stated he didn't, but for those who say he was scared to take that test, you got to say, well, when he fought Kell Brook, he had to go through every test in the book. VADA, the BBFC, who else they got over that joint? What's the ones that caught up Tyson Fury? All of them different agencies they got over there. They don't play in the UK when it comes to drug testing. And Kell Brook specifically requested VADA. Now, I will admit it was some hesitation on Errol Spence's part. Remember, there was a lot of talk about him not signing the contract and he had to think about it. And people accredited it to this reason. But eventually he signed and he took all the tests and he still defeated Kell Brook. So if you want to say Errol Spence is doing X, Y, Z, if that is your position, you may think that he may be just on something. Then you got to go back to that Kell Brook fight and you tell me, did Errol Spence look any different in that fight, which he was tested up to his eyeballs? Did he look any different in that fight? Did he look in any other fight? And I'd say no. Regardless if he was hit more or whatever the case, it was the same style. He kept coming. He showed that engine. So that's all I'm saying, man. The proof is in the pudding. So before y'all jump and shoot stuff out your mouth, do your homework. Do your homework. And I say to you, I do have issues about Errol Spence's weight. But when it comes to drug testing, I think he's clean, in my opinion. I don't believe he goes through VADA now. I think only when necessary. But I think he's a clean fighter. I mean, his biggest victory on paper today, his world championship fight, he was super clean. And he looked impressive in that particular fight also. So there's your proof, man. There's your proof. Unless you can come up with other proof to show me how I can't find nothing else. I can't find nothing else because there is nothing else. Only thing that's left is to respect Errol the Truth Spence. I don't believe he's on nothing. But if you want to say he's a weight bully, then I'm going to say I may agree. And that's my position. So we'll see. So to the next video, Main Man, Made Man. Don't forget to subscribe. Twitter, Made Man 511. Facebook, Main Man, Made Man. Boxing Forum. Google Plus, Main Man, Made Man. You know, we love Errol Spence. I mean, I'm a big fan. He's won me over. He's beaten my favorite fighter. He's beaten a guy from my hometown. You know what I mean? I have nothing left to do but respect Errol Spence. But the fact still remains, he does get away heavy on weight, but he is not the only fighter to do it. So if you want to sit there and use him and say, oh, well, he's this, he's that, he's that, I can give you 10 other fighters that do the same thing. Are you going to say the same thing about them? To the next video. Peace out.